but has lived in the U.S. for many years. And this book,
what is the name of the book again?
The Storm Before the Calm. And I read it like about 6 months ago and was beyond blown away. And he writes about these macro cycles that lead to enormous transition in U.S. history. Because again, we're such a young country, right? 250 years old or barely that, right? And basically there were two cycles, and I believe one cycle, so there's like a political cycle and a social cycle, and one of them occurs roughly every 50 years, one of them occurs roughly every 80 years, and he goes through each cycle. So what creates the tension, the pressure, the break point, the rebuild. But what he writes about in this book is, look, this is the first time we're coming up to both cycles happening around the same time, like roughly 2030. Oh. And so what he's saying, like everything that we're going through right now, politically and socially and economically, is actually pretty predictable. And here's what's interesting. He wrote the book, I believe, pre-2020.
Whoa.
So a lot of what he said was kind of going to happen is already happening. It's super interesting. And the implications for 2024, 2028 in terms of, kind of presidential stuff is interesting because obviously a lot of it has to do with different administrations and things like that.
So what is he predicting is happening?
So he thinks we're coming to the end of a cycle where basically the current political and social structure has exceeded its utility, right? So politics, I don't think anybody would disagree that politics has basically lost its service, right? Like the people aren't benefiting from their politicians anymore. So why is that? Well, so let's go back to the last cycle. So he said the last cycle was Jimmy Carter into Ronald Reagan, right? And so Carter was the last of that cycle, which was kind of super big government. And then Reagan ushered in, obviously small government, but also lots of military spending. And, what he says is, actually, I'm trying to think. I don't think he actually predicts exactly what's going to happen in the next cycle. But what he says is all of the kind of discourse that we're seeing now where basically there's nothing that's really bipartisan anymore, that's going to lead to kind of a breakdown of the system where I'm trying to think how he describes it much more eloquently than I can. The gist of it is he says that the next president to be elected will be kind of the last of the cycle. So that whoever's elected in 2024, he thinks is kind of the last of the current system we have. And we will, again, it's hard for me to imagine this is true, but what he's basically saying is it will no longer be kind of the elite class running the country. Because, that's obviously what we do right now, right? We have a pretty elite class that runs the country.
How is that possible?
I can't fathom how it's possible.
How would it be possible that they would relinquish their grasp on power and control? Because it seems like everything they're doing is indicating that they're moving towards greater and greater control and more. They're taking advantage more and more of the situation to reap financial benefits. When you look at just the fucking insider trading that they're allowed to do and no one's stopping. Just that. It's just unbelievable that there's not more pushback against that. Like there's jokes about, Nancy Pelosi and what a great stock trader she is. But if you just look at the entire list of Republicans and Democrats that are involved in stock trading that do way better than some of the very best traders in the world, like it's really clear that this is a fucking money grab. And that it's dirty, and no one's stopping it, and no one's voting to stop. There's no one who's speaking out. And the problem is the people that would be involved in putting forth legislation to make this illegal are benefiting from it being legal. Like they would never do that, and their constituents aren't fired up about it. It seems to be. I guess
that's part of the issue, right? I think that's part of the question is like, how much longer does that continue?
Yeah,
where the voting class sort of says like, yeah, enough's enough. It's like we're going to put people in who are going to kind of change things.
What's also, we're in a very weird place right now with the media, because the media has lost its hold over the narrative. It used to be that the media was the primary place that people would go to find out what's going on in the world. But now the media conveniently leaves out anything that it doesn't want to be at the front and center in terms of like things that people concentrate on and talk about. Like one of the greatest examples that's happening right now is this massive protest in France. Massive protest in France. 9 million people on the street. Literally up
This is
in
about the
arms.
Social Security change?
Yes.
Yeah.
Macron in France takes his fucking $80,000 watch off under the table while he's talking to people about tightening up and about how this has to be done. Like the guy's wearing a fucking find out what watch he was wearing, because you're a watch head. You would like this. But the fact that this dork thought it was a good move to take his fucking watch off under the table. And then there's the protests in Israel. Enormous protests in Israel. Millions of people on the streets. And you're not hearing a fucking peep about it. You know,